Hello and thank you for listening to the Canary podcast. On Before Magic, I'm your host, Mahdi, and today I want to talk about Halloween magic. Halloween, happy Halloween. This is the season of Halloween. This time of the year, I usually like to watch horror movies. I actually like horror movies. I like it when movies scare me. I'm not really into the ultra-violent movies, but I'm into movies that can genuinely scare me. I think people watch movies, films, and read books and engage with all that media in order to experience different emotions, and it's very rare that I feel really afraid while watching a movie, but I do enjoy that feeling, so I have been trying to catch up on the most current Halloween movies. Some of them are okay. Most of them are horrible, though. But that is not the topic of conversation. Right now, I want to talk about Halloween magic. I just want to say, as I got older and older, I stopped celebrating Halloween. I never really cared about Halloween, but as I got older, I stopped paying attention to it. But I understand that it's such a big thing in the culture here in North America, in Canada, and in the U.S., that you have to try to engage with the culture that surrounds you. So, anyways, and it's very relevant to magic. Why do I say it's relevant to magic? Because there are people who perform magic that has a Halloween flavor to it. And most of the big magicians throughout history have done Halloween-themed events or shows. One of the great examples, probably the most well-done example, is from Darren Brown, who had his trick-or-treat specials out in the UK. I believe they were on Channel 4. And that was a TV series that Darren Brown had back in those days, which was actually really cool. It sort of had a Halloween flavor to it, sort of felt spooky, but at the same time was just very entertaining. Darren Brown, who's also famous in the UK for his series, I believe he did a special called Seance. It might have been called The Seance. If I'm misremembering, it's the one with the seance. If it has a different title, it's the one with the seance, so that there's no confusion. And that was very, very interesting to watch. And one of the curious things about it was they had a helpline. If you're watching this program and something, and it's affecting you in your own mind and in your own house, please call this number. And that number was overloaded with complaints. I want to talk a little bit about that, sort of the dangers of this type of magic on people, because there are real dangers in many ways. Part of them are psychological, some of them aren't, but we'll go into that a little bit later. I just want to talk a little bit about it. I understand that it's a historical thing to perform spooky magic with a twist of the seeming occult. Some people perform seances. They call them, mock seances. Some of them pretend that they're real seances. Some of them may even be real seances. Who am I to know? I've seen some of these performances. I understand what's going on, and as I get older, I like them less and less. I understand what they're able to create in the audience, this sensation of fear and interacting with the supernatural, but I don't like them. And there's other stuff that people do this time of the year. A lot of people use the haunted pack. For those of you who know what the haunted pack is, it is a trick where somebody selects a card and the deck moves by itself and the card pulls itself out of the deck. It literally looks like there's an invisible force opening the deck up and the card is moving by itself. It's quite interesting. It's quite a strong effect, really. So there's that side of it. And I think I'm okay. I think I'm okay with any magic that uses, the principle of the haunted pack, and it's a little bit spooky. I would just say, for performers, for a lot of reasons, to stay away from the so-called spirit bells and what do they call it? The rapping hand. There's a wooden hand that goes on the table and it raps on the table in order to answer the spectators' questions. The spirit bell is the same thing. The bell seemingly looks unattached to anything, and it rings in order to answer the audience's questions. I know for a fact that many, many people will leave those performances. I personally won't leave, but I would want to leave because I wouldn't leave. I would want to see what the magician is doing from a curiosity standpoint, but I don't think it's a great I don't think it's a great performance. I think any time that you are using a real, look at what people criticized Uri Geller for. What was the big thing about Uri Geller? Why did all the magicians hate him? All the magicians in the world, most of the magicians in the world, you could say all of them, but it wasn't all. Most of them hated him because he was claiming to do something for real. He was claiming to have a real power. I don't know if that's wrong, but I feel that it's wrong to deceive people to feel that there is a supernatural, dark force making things responsible for the magical effect on stage. For example, the whole premise of the spirit bell is that the person who's asking these questions is interacting with some sort of supernatural force, whether that's a demon or a spirit or a dead person. Whatever the performers is giving for an explanation, I don't think it's appropriate for the audience. I understand that these are mechanical and electrical props that have a deceptive component in which the magician is triggering them secretly in order to respond, in order to trigger the bell to ring, in order to trigger the hand to rap, in order to make these things happen. But I think the effect for the audience, I think people who perform that kind of stuff are very irresponsible, because I think a lot of things are happening. From a purely psychological level, there's people who don't want to have anything to do with that. There are people who become unwound, who develop. There are many people who are mentally unstable, and interacting with, having an experience like that is damaging to their mental health. I've heard numerous stories of of people seeking psychiatric help after seeing something like this, and you may laugh it off and say, "Oh, they're crazy." I mean, they were crazy anyways. Yeah, they're nut jobs. They're just watching this performance and they're calling, for help because they have psychological problems. Well, if somebody does have psychological problems and they're in your audience, it's not necessarily their fault, and they may not be aware of it. So you exacerbating that problem or triggering, some states of mind in them, which is going to be potentially damaging to them, I don't think it's a good thing at all. And I don't think you can hold those people accountable. They're not too sure what they're interacting with, and they believe it's real. And that has a negative impact on their life and on their mental health. So there's that to consider. And I'm being completely serious, by the way. I'm not saying this as a facetious thing, as a joke. There are people who become triggered by these things, and it leads them to having mental health problems. Another component of it, which I've also seen in person, is there are a lot of people whose religious beliefs contradict with them being allowed to experience those things. There's a lot of people in the southern states. One of my colleagues in magic, in mentalism, performs this type of magic, and he will lose all of his bookings in the southern states if he performs that on stage. They do not want those types of performances for their students because the students come from strong Christian backgrounds, and they don't want their children to be seemingly communicating with spirits and demons and dead people. So from a economic standpoint, I understand that there's a huge Halloween market, and there are people who are seeking out. There's a craving. I think there's generally a craving for the supernatural amongst the public, and people are not having that craving satiated. We've sort of, unfortunately, I think, removed the supernatural component of people's religious beliefs. People don't, even most people who go to church these days do not believe in the supernatural components of God and everything, all the supernatural elements and stories, the supernatural reality described in the Bible and in different religious texts. And they sort of have written them off as fairy tales, as stories, but they still have a deep, deep craving for that supernatural reality, which is actually real, and it exists all around us. So, that is why I know it's such a big market, the Halloween market in North America, because we've killed the supernatural in our daily lives, which also leads to many other things. People seeking those supernatural experiences through occult or seemingly occult organizations or practices, witchcraft, seances, which all ties into Halloween, raising the dead, the dead walking the earth, spirits just floating around, and a lot of really dark stuff. But that supernatural component is definitely something that people crave in their own lives. There's a craving for it. It's not a coincidence that Halloween is such a big event in the continent in the world that has killed the supernatural. And you have all these practices rising as a result, as a side effect, a symptom. So I would say be careful if you are a magician and you want to do something for Halloween that you're not alienating your audiences. There's many people who will stay away from certain things at all costs. For example, let's say you are a magician and you're like, oh, guess what? We're going to have a Halloween seance. It's a special show, the seance show. They're probably going to be a part of your audience that really will be excitable when they hear those things, excited, and they're probably going to be other people who are really going to be turned off by that and turned off by what you're doing as a result, because they don't want to have anything to do with that in their personal lives. They disagree with it. I disagree with it, to be quite honest. The reason I disagree with it leads into the third reason, which is I do believe that there is a supernatural component, supernatural reality that is real, and when I believe that when people interact with darkness on this level and they invite it into their lives, it has a lot of unintended consequences. I think we're so used to seeing movies like The Exorcist or other horror movies where people interact with dark things, occult things, and as a result, they're floating in their beds and their heads are turning around and they're puking on the priest. And there's all sorts of crazy, really obvious supernatural events going on around them, where in real life I think that these things that this energy that they let into their life manifests in different ways, in subtle ways. I think it can manifest in ways of little things going wrong in your life, things that shouldn't go wrong, but they just go wrong, and you just sort of tie it to coincidence. And could be also tied to people feeling depressed for no reason, just out of the blue, just feeling depressed. I think it's tied to all sorts of mental illnesses when you let darkness into your life and you sort of become obsessed with it. I honestly always believe that it results in some sort of mental health problem, which I think has a level of deniability to it. I think people can't correlate it exactly to occult practices or an unhealthy interest in the occult, and then I think it just sort of flies under the radar. But I really do think there is a real supernatural reality, and that it correlates to our personal lives that we are living, and that we should try to avoid bringing those influences into our lives and bringing those influences into the lives of our audiences. And now, again, I'm not going to tell you what to do, what not to do. Darren Brown, for example, who did the seance. I'm a huge fan of Darren Brown. And I really liked when he did the seance. I found it scary. I found it exciting. I found it very interesting, very entertaining. but I also know that it's not right. So I think it's a question of what is best for your audience. Do you really need to make them interact with darkness in order to entertain them? Darren Brown is so great, and he has so many great shows. Did he have to do that show? I don't think he did. I mean, he did it. It's done. But I really think that the things that I'm discussing are real, and the dangers are real. I mean, they had a helpline on the screen for Darren Brown, and they were flooded with calls and complaints. And I think that there are a number of people who do have psychological problems. Let's say you don't believe in there's a spiritual component at all to it, and you're totally fine to believe that. I mean, I'm not here to convince you of anything, but I mean, let's just look at it from a strictly biological, chemical, psychological standpoint. I think that you are putting people in danger when you confront them with an experience which can unwind them. I mean, these are not subtle experiences. These are experiences that are extremely convincing. If you watch Darren Brown's program, the techniques that he's using are so convincing and deceptive that you really feel, even watching from home, that this is real. I mean, it is spooky to watch. And you get a number of people who, I mean, nowadays it seems like the whole world is nuts and being put on prescription medication. And sorry, that's not an insult to people who have mental health problems and are on medication. I don't mean it that way. I'm trying to explain that there's a number of people who are psychologically vulnerable in the public. They have a vulnerability, and you're exposing them to something that is going to damage their psyche, that's going to get them fixated on thoughts that are not going to lead them anywhere good, thoughts that are going to get them obsessed with death and this fantasy world that all revolves around death, and the afterlife, and spirits, and communicating with spirits. And I just don't think it's healthy. I really don't think it is. And there's numerous studies. I haven't pulled up these studies, but I have read many studies on this. I wasn't expecting to speak about this. I was coming into this talking about Halloween magic, which I sort of want to get back into because I feel like I'm just nagging on people to be responsible, which is what I want to do, but at the same time I don't want to bore all of you with that. So I'm just going to say it. I don't agree with people using these things. I think there's lots of negative consequences that shouldn't be ignored from many, many levels, whether it's psychological, whether it's spiritual, whether it's alienating someone because of their beliefs, to the point where they will disassociate themselves with you. I think that it's dangerous as a career choice, as a professional choice. I don't think it's the safe choice to make, but I understand that people can also become tremendously successful with it, as there is a craving for that. Let's see, what else did I want to talk about? I don't know, Halloween magic. I mean, I'm trying to think if I've ever seen a Halloween show that was decent. Not really. I do like the idea, though, of a Halloween concept show. I do like the idea of spooky magic. I just think that we need to do it in a place where we are aware of our audience and what we're giving to them, because I think we can give them. I think we're here to give them much more than just an experience. I think, anybody can give them an experience, but I think we have a responsibility to give them a positive experience with us. I don't know what else to say about Halloween magic. It's a hard topic. I mean, it goes back. There's a long history of people doing it. All magic pretty much ties into the supernatural in one way or another. I mean, it all does. Magic is people demonstrating or using power and showing the results of power to other people, whether that power is willpower, whether it's a supernatural power, a magical power, however you want to explain it, it is always a demonstration of power. It is someone using some sort of power to accomplish something, which very, very, if you look back historically, it ties, directly into the supernatural. So I don't know where, even for me, I'm trying to give a moral guideline, but I'm not too sure if anything that I'm saying is appropriate. It's making me really think. Is all magic inappropriate? If all magic is deception, showing somebody a supernatural power that can unwind them, does that mean that we shouldn't perform magic? Where do you draw the line? Do you draw the line when we involve spirits? Do you draw the line when we involve ghosts, demons, the dead? Where do you draw the line? Is it all inappropriate? It's a very simple question. It is something that is bothering me. It's something that I can't figure out at this moment. I think I'm so desperate in a way that to want to defend magic because I enjoy magic so much. But is magic as a general is magic as a performance art dangerous to people? Could it have consequences to people's mental health? I know that there's many people who have contacted me who actually believe in magic. And, this might be because of they have, a mental, something going on with them psychologically. It could be their culture where they just actually believe in magic. We sort of take it for granted that we don't believe in magic in the West. Some people do with witchcraft and other things, but generally we don't, as a society, believe in magic, where in many cultures around the world, they actually do believe in magic. So I get messages from people all over the world asking me to help them with their problems, as if I have real powers that I could intervene. And these are all sorts of personal problems they have in their lives that I absolutely cannot help them with. I have no power to help them with. And I have people asking me to help them win the lottery, to help them, they're betting money on a football game and they want to know what I feel, who's going to win. So now I'm sort of tongue-tied myself. I don't know where I've sort of opened a Pandora's box here. And isn't that what always happens in the horror movies? Somebody opens a Pandora's box right at the very beginning. They stumble into a room and there's a book on the table, an ancient book, and they open it up and they start reading the first pages of the book, and that first few lines that they read turn out to be a spell that awakens all the darkness, and it's unleashed. That's sort of what I've done with my questions here, just questioning magic. And I've sort of confused myself because now I don't even know how to answer. I came into this wanting to have a discussion, to open up a dialogue, and I'm at a point where I have no defensible ground. I can't really defend magic and what I'm saying. I've given explanations which sort of invalidate all the reasons that I would actually want to defend magic and that I love magic. I know that magic can be so positive in people's lives, but at the same time, I'm at a point where I can't ignore what I just said about the dangers. So I don't know what I just did to myself. I've sort of screwed myself over in recording this. But if anything, I hope that this provides you some food for thought, and hopefully you understand everything that I'm saying. I know that I'm sort of jumping back and forth, but you are seeing my thoughts basically as they develop in my mind right now, in my thought process. So if anything else, I hope that serves you well somehow. I don't know how that would serve you, but seeing how I think might serve you, because I do think about this stuff a lot. And I knew that I was going into this wanting to talk about Halloween magic, but I didn't want to talk too much about specific effects because I'm not a huge fan of those effects for the reasons stated. Even slate rating, for those of you who know slates, it's a great effect. It's a beautiful effect. It's a beautiful effect. I think the Spirit Cabinet is a beautiful effect. When I look at them objectively, I see problems with the experience that we're giving to the audience, and I don't know. I just want to talk about that, give you something to think about. I really thought I would be more definitive in my thoughts, sort of guide you along my feelings, but these are not feelings that I have very well established, which leads to this chaotic thought process and zigzagging back and forth that you are hearing in front of you. So anyways, that's it. We have a few days until Halloween. This is the Halloween episode of the podcast. If I were smart, what I'll probably do next year is choose somebody who did a really great spooky performance and just go in depth, talk about how great it was, talk about the technical aspects. I think that is a lot better than this, but we can't always hit 100%. You guys are in this with me. You guys who are listening to this have probably listened to a few of these podcasts by now, and if this is your first podcast, I would highly, highly recommend that you subscribe. We do a podcast. We try to do it every single week, launch them on Mondays. That's the plan anyways, so that you guys have something to listen to as you start your week, something to think about. We have a lot of past episodes. You can check them out on our website. Everything from making dreams come true to staying healthy on the road, how to use mirrors in magic, just everything you could possibly imagine this podcast explores. So check those out. And what else is going on? Not too much in the news other than that. We have a very cool profile piece that just came out from True Calling on me. So check that out. It should be linked somewhere. It'll be linked somewhere on the website or on my social media, the Before Magic social media, Mahdi the Magician. Well, check those out. You guys will enjoy those. And next week I will have a real conversation about something. It will be a lot better, just a lot smoother, a lot more clear, more concise, less argumentative with myself. So that is that. I really do thank you guys for listening as always, and I will catch you in the next one. Thank you and good night. Happy Halloween. Oh, and if you do go out on Halloween, please be safe. There's a lot of there's a lot of idiots out there, more idiots than I think have ever existed at any time of humanity, and they do drink a lot, and they get generally crazy, so I would just be cautious if you're outside, because I want everybody to stay safe. So enjoy your Halloween if you celebrate Halloween. If you don't celebrate Halloween, like me, I don't really celebrate it, to be honest. Have a good week, and we will catch you in November.